Welcome to Teaching That Counts, a podcast dedicated to the teaching and learning of mathematics. I'm your host, April Mouton, and I love to talk about math education. Together with my amazing guests, we'll explore several topics in the world of math teaching and student learning. Whether it's building thinking classrooms, healing math trauma, building student and teacher math confidence, or creating more equitable math workspaces. If it's going to help students learn math and teachers teach math, then we'll talk about it. So if you're a teacher, a parent like me, admin, or a coach like me, I hope you find something that can inspire you and help build your practice listening to this podcast. You can always find us online at www.teachingthatcountspodcast.com. Yeah, I know that's long, but hey, that's the URL. You can find me on YouTube at MyEstusMath or on socials at MyEstusTeach. Thanks for listening, and I hope you enjoy the podcast. All right, welcome everybody to this month's podcast, Teaching That Counts. And like always, I'm always excited for my guests. I learned so much from all my guests. And I'm so excited today. We've been using the Illustrative Math curriculum in my district for quite some years now. So when the opportunity came to have this guest on my podcast, I quickly jumped at it. So I'd like to welcome April Mouton to our podcast. And April, I'm going to let you introduce yourself and what you do with Illustrative Mathematics.
Awesome. Well, again, thank you so much, April, for having me tonight. Just super excited about sharing the joy I have for mathematics, but really the joy I have for supporting our educators in this really hard space of teaching and learning and really at the end of the day, supporting our students. As you mentioned, my name's April Mouton. I'm currently serving as the Interim Vice President of Product Development at Illustrative Mathematics. Previously, I was also the Senior Director of Access, Content, and Equity. And at the heart of what I do, I get to design and refine our problem-based curriculum and our professional learning content. I get to work really well and collaboratively with an amazing group of educators and designers and researchers to help build materials that center student thinking and help to honor our teachers' expertise. As you know, at IM, we believe that all students can learn math by doing math. And so my job is to help create those moments for those everyday opportunities in our classrooms. A little bit about me. I've spent about 2 decades between as an educator, either being a classroom teacher or mathematics teacher. I graduated undergrad thinking I was going to go to law school and decided to teach for a year to make some money because I was tired of being a poor college teacher or college student. And I think within, that first semester of teaching math, I fell in love with it. And even the way I kind of came into mathematics, like I said, I went to school pre-law, never needed to take another math course. And then I started coaching and supporting my classmates. And I was like, I might as well take the class with you. And so then I ended up with this mathematics minor after sitting alongside some friends. And so I've had that opportunity to be classroom teacher primarily at the middle school level. I think I survived about 2 weeks in kindergarten, and I was like, no, they're too little for me. So I was classroom teacher. I became the district math coach at a district in San Jose area, in the Bay Area. I then was a school administrator, a district administrator, and I've really kind of honed my work in around mathematics and culturally grounded pedagogy. I recently earned my doctorate in school improvement from Texas State, and my research really centered around identity formation and actually followed a school, a new kind of HBCU like high school was like their focus. But this school in Denver, they opened during the pandemic, so they had a lot of challenges as a brand new school. But the focus of my research was really looking at how they could leverage identity affirming spaces to increase academic and social achievement. So that's been a big focus. And I'm also a mom of 4. We're currently in the process of adopting a young girl. And so I have kids between kinder, upper elementary, middle school, and high school at my
Wow,
house
okay.
at any given time. And so always learning and thinking about the power of mathematics, but also helping them to see themselves as mathematical thinkers has been a heartbeat in the work that I currently do at IM and just how I engage in my daily walk.
Yeah. And what a vast amount of experience, and one of those experiences right nearby where I am in California, and in fact I taught in Hayward
Okay,
for a few years at a
nice.
charter school over there. And so the Bay Area, what a beautiful place to teach.
Yes.
So much diversity, so much culture. I loved my time in the Bay Area. So we can learn a lot about how to bring asset-based learning to the classroom with so many different types of students.
Hmm.
So I do want to get back to the kids thing because
Yes.
I also have kids. I have three kids in one in fifth, one in eighth, and one in high school. And my experience with them as a math educator and thinking about how what they're learning in mathematics has been it's been interesting, but also a challenge.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about problem-based learning because I know
Mhm.
that's what IM is all about. And I know that some of the listeners out there are using curriculum that's problem-based. I know there's a lot of different curriculum that are problem-based. We use also open up resources. I know Amplify, Desmos has been looking into that. I think they actually use some IM as their base
Yes.
um, in some of that curriculum. So how what's the difference in what we would see as a problem-based curriculum and I guess a something we'd see a traditional textbook as
Yeah, no,
looking like?
absolutely. Absolutely. And I feel that so true. Being a parent and being into math and then seeing like the math experience that my kids currently have. We often at my home have what we call mommy school over the summer, where
Uh-huh.
we experience math by doing. Because for a lot of my own children, when they've experienced mathematics like in a traditional setting, it has been about memorization and procedure. And you just flip this thing, but I don't even know why I'm flipping the thing, but the teacher said to do it this way, mom. So I'm just going to
Uh,
do it this way. And so at IM, we definitely believe that all students learn math best by doing the math, right? By actually experiencing. And in traditional materials, students again are also often shown how to solve a problem, like they're math watchers, and then they learn how to repeat that practice that they're watching. But within the problem-based model, we really try to first center our students with real and meaningful problem spaces, and then give that structure for students to explore, to reason, to start to make understandings, make connections. Um, we often talk about within IEM uh, a simile around like riding a bike. And if I'm teaching my child how to ride a bike, I don't just ride the bike and have them watch me ride the bike and go, see, now you should be able to ride this bike. I
yeah.
mean, they are learning things by watching me. They might learn a couple of, but until they actually get on that bike themselves and then they get that confidence and you start to scaffold and pull back, is when they actually believe like I can do this too, right?
Yeah.
It's amazing when our kids sometimes go like, "Wow, you could do this thing." It's like, "No, you could do this too, and you don't have to just watch me to learn how to do this." So in our approach, we really see the teacher's role shifting from being like that deliverer or that holder of knowledge to truly being a facilitator of thinking.
Yeah.
In our structure, in a problem-based structure within IM, we currently have a space where we launch, we give students an invitation into a problem, we give them an invitation into a real life experience or something that's relevant to them. We give them time to think through that either individual think time, but also partner or small group think time. And that teacher serving as a facilitator, as a guide, and giving them a chance um, to practice and to try and to tinker with. And then we shift that work time into more of a deep study and then finally a synthesis and helping students make sense of what they experience. And so I think one of the biggest difference when I, as a principal, would walk into classrooms and see the difference It was who was doing the lifting, who was doing the learning and the thinking. And so in a problem-based space, you're going to see the students doing that heavy lifting. They're going to be the ones doing the talking and absorbing, and the teacher is there again to give them that guide to support the reasoning, support their justification, to help them then transfer the understanding and the experience that they're having to making that, abstract and that concrete come together for them. So I think that's a big shift. And yeah, I think when we think math is something, whether in a traditional model, I think sometimes math is considered like this thing you're told to do, this procedure you're
Mm,
told to follow. Um, they're engaged in that versus in IM, we think of math as something that students actually do, they experience, they make sense of. And so I think that's a big shift that you'll see from a traditional kind of space of, can you repeat this thing? Can
right,
versus are you part of experiencing and actually making sense together?
right. Yeah, and it's funny you say it's something you do, right? I when I was in the classroom, and I had my own. I teach summer school, but when I
Mhm.
was doing my own classroom before I became a coach, I often would tell students, because I used to actually be a basketball coach, and I coached golf, and I used to tell them, like, mathematics is not a spectator sport.
Correct.
We don't we don't sit there and watch it and just know how to do things.
Mhm.
And even in the cases, like, I'm not going to go in and show you how to shoot a shot and show you how to do a layup, and just be there doing it and then say, okay, now you do the layup. Like,
Yeah.
you have to actually physically get in there and play the game to know what's going on. And so I always felt math really needs to be done to
Yes.
be understood and to learn, not just to practice it. And so I think that comes from my college work. And I went to Cal Poly, San Luis
Okay.
Obispo, and the Cal
Alright.
Poly motto was learn by doing. I take that into my teaching. I think students need to learn by doing. And I love problem-based learning. I love problem-based curriculum because it gives teachers a a curriculum that allows students to do the heavy lifting, like you said, to be um the drivers of the learning, not and move the teacher into the facilitator role.
Yeah.
Um, I used
Well,
to
I
tell
mean,
my
if you're
kid,
gonna shout
go
out
ahead.
Cal Poly, though, I do have to at least shout out UC Davis, go Ags, because 'cause I'm an
Oh,
Aggie at heart, and one of the things that I think
total rival.
Aggies are really known for, though, is, like, you gotta get dirty, you gotta get in there, you gotta touch it, and when I think about well, that doesn't been we don't tip cows, but, like, when my cow approach, my first cow encounter as an undergrad, when we think about what we're trying to do, especially at IM, it is I can only go in there and get dirty if I feel like the environment is conducive for me to get dirty. And so
Yeah,
we're really intentional about how we design our instruction to invite students in, to invite those multiple entry points. Because I think when as a math teacher, I learned really early on. I thought like, oh, my kids are good. They're sitting, they're quiet, they're copying the board. But my students learn like the routine of school, and they
hmm,
found the safety in, okay, she's gonna do a warm up. I'm just gonna copy it. I don't even have to try because in 5 minutes she's gonna go over the answer. So I'll copy that then. And I had to shift how I was teaching into, okay, how do I create a problem where it's that low floor, high ceiling where every child can jump in from the beginning, right? And so
right,
that invitation into the work is so intentional. Um, the routines we use, whether it's, notice and wonder or which three go together, like they're purposely designed that everybody, no matter where they're at, meeting them with their lived experiences, what they bring, they can show up and at least lean into it. And now that I'm leaned in, I feel a little bit more comfortable, like, okay, she's gonna like let us go off and try this problem on our own or with a partner. All right, cool. Like I feel I don't even want to use the word safe. I feel brave enough. I feel like I'm equipped enough to lean into that space. And I think that's something that, again, even in my own teaching, when I shifted from this traditional, like, okay, I'm going to do the thing, you guys are going to copy it, we're going to do it together, you're going to copy it, until how do I create that space for students to lean in? Again, they were doing the heavy lifting. They were having the conversations. They were making the connections. They were remembering, like, hey, remember when we built that slope? Like, they could speak about it in a different way than, do you remember that problem 52 that we did on that worksheet? Like, no, they
Yeah.
remembered the experience. And so that invitation that's intentional in our design is so important because it allows people to get dirty, to do the work, to feel comfortable enough to try and know that I gotta actually fall when I'm riding my bike to learn how to balance. Like, and I have to be okay to fall and know that somebody's there to support me in that.
Right. Right. Um, I was thinking as you were saying that we have teachers that struggle to make that change, to make
Mhm,
that jump, right? To transition from, I'm going to just call it an explicit direct instruction
mhm,
classroom where I'm the person who's showing the models and showing, and you're just kind of repeating and regurgitating what I'm doing, and then here's a bunch of practice problems for you to practice at, right?
right.
The mimicking approach
Mhm.
that Peter Liljedahl talks about. How how do we start to get some of those teachers to think about giving kids more space to explore that without them? Yeah, it almost feels like we're holding hands a little bit more, like we're letting students be dependent upon us rather than giving them the spaces to be independent and the owners of their own learning with us guiding along. How do we make that shift though if the mindset of the teacher is always, well, they can't really do anything until I tell them what to how to
Yeah,
do it.
yeah.
That's been a big struggle, I think, for a lot of
Oh, yeah,
coaches that listen to the podcast.
absolutely. I mean, at the heart of it, it's trust, right?
Hmm.
Do I, as the educator, trust the curriculum to guide me where I need to go? Do I trust the students to engage? Do I trust that even if they all don't finish every component of this lesson at the end, that there were certain milestones along the way that I can then use that as a stepping stone for like the next day. And
Yeah.
I have guidance either built in within the curriculum to help me not have to do all of that lifting as the educator too. So then I can say, okay, well, this is how far we got, and this is what they were able to do. And oh, there's actually like if then guidance built into this curriculum to give me a place to go, where do I go next? And I can trust that it's there, and I can trust the coherence and the alignment that's intentional in this curriculum to get us there. I can trust that even though right now this notice and wonder might not be like the state assessment question 5 that I know my kids have to do,
Right.
if I trust that they actually are going to have this rich conversation that's going to prepare them to not only answer that question, but to explain their thinking, then I'm willing to do that. So in my coaching experience, when we've shifted from that direct kind of instruction, those were the two things I think I faced. It was either like this sense of control of um, I need the control. The kids need to know exactly what to do in this control so that I don't have maybe behavior problems or I don't have kids kind of going off the wrong, way or path. But also, I think too, there's this fear and this control of like, if I follow this thing lockstep, it will get me to this one result. And so I think in some, part of our professional learning is that we allow our educators to experience these routines. We allow them to take note of how they see the increase in student production, the conversation students are having, the questions that they're asking, and when we think about many schools that have these core competencies that they want every child to be, right? Like, I've never been to a school, especially in California, but across where like their core competency is like, you know, I want when people leave our school, when they leave our building, I want them to know how to bubble in an answer on a Scantron. Well, we don't even use Scantrons anymore. That's
Right.
how old I am. But I want them to just be able to fill out this thing. We always talk about we want them to be critical thinkers. We want them to be able to express their thinking both verbally and written. We want them to be collaborative. We want them to be able to be critical thinkers and have the resiliency to like lean in and persevere when things get tough. And so I think when I'm faced with a teacher that's struggling to have that trust, I lean in on asking the questions of like, what do you want your room to sound like and feel like? What is it
Mhm.
that you want students to
Mhm.
have access to? What is it that at the end of the day, when you think of what you want every child in your room to leave with, what are those things? And when we can hone into that, it's easy for me to then show them, whether it's with our IM curriculum or just in a problem-based space or um, a more invitational space, how certain routines that we can build in actually do provide the predictability that students need and a tool that they can actually use to then lead into the curriculum. So when
Mhm.
students are like, "Oh, this is how we always do this routine. I understand the rules of this game now. Now I can actually apply the tool and how can I use this routine to help me understand this mathematics? How can I use this tool now to dive into the math because I've had experience with doing that." And so I think that's a big piece where, yeah, as educators can trust into that or at least have small wins, okay? Let's try one task and see how it goes. Let's build on that now. Let's try
Mhm.
this center and see how that goes and then build on that. And then I think it helps them to start to make that small shift. Or let's take maybe there's like this mundane topic or this topic that we know like each year kids are going to struggle with fractions. Right? The ultimate
Fractions.
math F word, right?
Yeah, right?
We have a struggle with fractions. We've been teaching fractions the same way, and year after year, we know when we get to fractions, kids are gonna struggle. So why not? What's our risk now at this point to just say, let's try this other approach and see
Yeah.
if we can at least get students to talk and engage about this concept differently. I think helps our educators to find those small wins and be willing to say, like, "Ooh, I can trust this. I can trust the kids to try this thing. I can kind of step back a little bit and allow them to engage in their learning and own their learning."
Yeah. Yeah, I was having a conversation with a few people today and an administrator, and I was just discussing with them about how we've become so outcome oriented in our country. As I was talking to Lil Doll earlier this year, I think we talked about outcome driven by outcomes. And so what I'm hearing you say is that we need to be driven like trust the process. Trust the process. Have that trust in the curriculum's going to give me uh some help and assistance and support. And then when we use that process, our outcome's gonna come.
Mhm.
And I was just like, man, we have to stop thinking outcome based so much and think process based. And how are we supporting kids in their own thinking? The other thing I heard here was that um, students take ownership when they feel like they can make the next cognitive leap, right?
Yeah.
When they're using that prior knowledge or that experience that been able to give them to then make a connection in the mathematics instead of me saying, this is the connection I want you to make in mathematics, then we're no longer allowing them to be the owners of the mathematics. So I love, yeah, like I said before, I've been using IM for a few years now. I love the structure. I really like the support that they give the the teachers. And I don't want to sound like I'm like, this is an advertisement for IM, because I also use open up resources in
Mhm.
our high school,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
and another great problem based curriculum. I'm a fan of constructivism. I'm a fan of
Mhm.
problem-based experiences. I'm a fan of students being able to experience mathematics before I tell them how to do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And one thing I know that there's been a lot of research around is how problem-based learning, especially in mathematics, can be a vehicle for equity, for bringing in kids of all differences into mathematics. And so I know that that was one of your roles at a
Mhm.
point with IM. So I'm wondering if you can speak to that just a little bit on how shifting from a traditional approach to problem based approach can help us in our goal of equity within mathematics, especially for our kids that have been historically marginalized.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, learning is communal, right? Learning is communal.
Absolutely.
And if we don't create built-in spaces for that learning to be communal, then we limit the opportunity for us to not only learn from each other, build on each other's experiences, like you said, take that deeper ownership. And I think, equity can be a loaded word. And so when I think of the word equity, I think of it's giving people what they need when they need it.
Absolutely.
That was the
Absolutely.
experience I had when I had an opportunity to travel to Zambia. And so within IM, right, equity is built into the design. It's not an add-on. We didn't write it and then go, okay, let's sprinkle some equity on it now after we wrote it, right?
Yeah.
And so what that means though is that if we believe that all students are mathematical thinkers, and if we believe that we can create this curriculum that's grounded in the research and design that centers student thinking, that centers those multiple entry points, that ensures that every learner has an opportunity to access grade level mathematics. And what does that look like? And how do I create that low floor, high ceiling so kids can come into that? To us, that's what we mean, that how a problem based space can create that equity based space. And so, again, like we said, we kind of have three major components that we do to increase the accessibility for
Mm.
everyone, but to increase that entry point. And the first one is around this idea of a focus on context before formality. So we ensure that
Yes. Yes.
students get to engage, right, in these big ideas through real world experiences, situations that are relatable, and we allow students to make sense before we introduce like the rule, the formula, the term. Let's have some ownership of it, right? I remember teaching middle school math, and I had trying to get kids to understand solving equations, and the kids were, they were struggling with this whole, like, if you do something to one side, you do it to the other, right? Kind of thing. Like, how are we balancing this equation? And I was letting students discover through like a card sort some similarities and differences. And finally, I had this one girl who, middle school girl, we were struggling together. I was struggling with her, and she was just like, "Oh, it's like, I'm not gonna just put makeup on one side of my face and not the other. Like, I don't wanna look crazy out here." And I ran with it. I was like, "Yes. Does that make sense to you? Do you understand?" And so now I didn't have to use the word balance just yet. She was making sense of like, "Oh, there's a reason why I need to do something to both sides. There's an order, there's a system." But it wasn't me just dictating like, "Here's the rule, y'all. If you add this, you got," so she got to explore, she got to play with that idea, right? Play is important, even at middle school, even at high school. What does play look like in our classrooms so students can engage in that? Right, there's great mathematicians, the great Bob Moses and many people who have thought about how do we get students that chance to experience the context. The second thing we really work hard to do is embrace the productive struggle.
Mm.
That's hard. That's
Hmm.
hard as a teacher, right? You're on a pacing guide. You're like, I only got one day to teach this thing. Kids are struggling, and you're like, do I leave them? Do I spend an extra day? If I spend an extra day, am I not going to be on the same pace as my colleague? Right? All those decisions we're thinking constantly. Again, the coherence and the connection within our curriculum is that even if students are struggling on this day and they're struggling, but they're working through that struggle, know that day two, like we got you. Like we're gonna build on that struggle, and we're gonna build on that struggle. And so sometimes The aha moment's not at the end of that one 50-minute block period. It
Mhm.
might be at the end of the week. It might be at, the second week that all of a sudden they're like, know why you had us doing these things,
Yeah.
right? So having the task designed to challenge students with the support, those teachers are there guiding, right? There's that space to engage, to affirm their thinking. Um, right? Again, that whole like if I fall off the bike, I don't just say, "Oh, I'm never gonna ride this bike." It's like, okay, I fell because I turned too quickly, or I fell because I was on this hill and I didn't know I had to pump harder. So how do
Mm.
I then take that learning and that understanding into my next space? And then that third piece that we really try to do is again is to support access through design. So because we have embedded math language routines, we have embedded universal design for learning supports. These are part of our curriculum. It's not like, oh, let me find that box off to the side that tells me what to do if I have this one kid that showed up in the middle of the
Yeah.
year and has these needs. Is how does this actually support like the curb effect? Yeah, I might be intentional of supporting a certain student with this routine, but I'm actually increasing not only access for that student, but access for everyone in here, and they can all lean in. So yeah, I mean, and at the heart of this, I'm speaking of the curriculum, but I hope you also hear that I'm speaking about the teachers. The teachers are
Mhm.
constantly making these moves throughout the day. And when they know they have a support material that's going to be there to guide them with that if then guidance, with that extra support for that student, with that extra routine, our teachers are then able to dive in and serve as that facilitator, be responsive to the students. They already have a set of embedded reflection questions and planning supports to support that work. And so to me, that's how we get to equity based. We don't just say, sorry, you didn't pass this test, you're not in this course, you don't get access to this thing, or yeah, maybe you struggled last year, you had a gap or in your learning. It doesn't mean that you don't ever get a chance to learn this thing. It's how can I still expose you to this concept and then also figure out how to give you the supports needed so you can truly access it. So to me, that's why problem based is helping us get to this space of equity based. And again, I think if we really shift equity and thinking of how are we giving people what they need when they need it, how am I being responsive, and our curriculum allows many opportunities for teachers to be responsive in the cool downs, and then we give if then guidance, right? And asset based if then guidance. If your students are showing this, here's where you might go next with them, right? Because all of our students are able to do something, like they all are communicating something, and it's our job as those educators to understand, right? To take my student and her makeup and go, okay, she does understand this, but this is how
Yeah.
she's translating that. And now how do I not shoot her off and say, "Oh, that's a horrible idea. We don't use that kind of language," but to really lift that up. And she sat taller that day, right? She leaned into the work because she said, "I can actually make a connection that's meaningful to me, and it's okay that I could even share this in the whole class. And now I have a tool that I could take with me into another experience."
Yeah, that's wonderful. I know in the new mathematics framework here in California, we call that asset-based
Mhm.
instruction, and really looking at how to utilize students' assets as they come to our classroom to bring them into the mathematics and let them understand that everyone's coming in with something, and
Right.
that they can come in and be part of this discussion. So I have a couple of questions for you. I still want to get back to the parent thing. So just
Mm.
this is mostly for, I guess, for me and you and maybe some parents out there. But I know that I struggle with. You mentioned that you do some family math time, and
Yes,
I
mama
have
school.
mom school. Yeah, I have dad school here. I think I have a not vertical non-permanent surface in my living room. It's like our math board, and my daughter put math on it. It's cute, and we what I struggle with though is I struggle with all of the work that I do with my teachers, with the work that we do in problem based, knowing how great I am. I know I'm saying a few
Yeah, mhm,
amplify, mid school math. Oh, there's a ton out there, right?
absolutely.
And knowing the experiences that I've given my students when I was in the classroom, knowing the experience that the teachers that I'm working with give their students in the classroom, especially in high school, and then thinking about the experience that my kids, well, not all of them, but when they get particular teachers that just is tough for me to deal with, that the experience isn't what I
Yeah.
would
Oh,
hope
yeah.
that they get, right? And how do you, if you've done the same thing, how do you deal with that? Because I know how I deal with it. It's tough, but it's like I feel like I'm biting my tongue so much. There's only like, and I don't want to, be this dad that comes in and says this is what you should be doing, right? But
Yeah.
gosh, how do we continue to do the work that we do, knowing that, man, I wish I could go in there and help our our kids' teachers.
Yeah. No, I feel you on that. I remember one of the first, like, student study team meetings I went in, and, it's different when you're an educator and you can speak the language, and I started
Yeah.
speaking their language, and they were like, "Oh, wait, hold on, we gotta get the principal here on this call." So, and I also think, like, even my own parents who were hardworking. For my dad was in the military, my mom's a nurse, did not go into further college education, was super hands off in our educational experience because they trusted our educators, they trusted our teachers, which I think was totally fine. But I don't think my mom would have ever gone to the school and advocated for me because I think culturally didn't feel like that was her place to go in and say the thing, right?
Mhm.
Unless there was some element of harm probably happening to her child. Um, and so it is tricky. It is tricky. And I have a lot of parents on the neighborhood that will come and ask me for advice, like, should I talk to the teacher? Like, what should I do? You're in education, you know the things. So I'm kind of like the community whisperer on my street here. Um, and right at the heart of all of that, right? At the heart of all of that, our teachers have a lot on their plate. They're experts in their field, like they've studied their craft,
Yeah.
and they might sometimes be given a curriculum that doesn't always elicit an invitational space. But I think what's unique about the idea of instructional routines, they can stand on their own to enhance any curriculum, right? You
Mm.
can have a very scripted, rote curriculum, or you could have, a very dynamic curriculum. In both cases, I think our teachers are so important in helping to foster that community engagement because either way, whether I'm given amazing IM curriculum that has all these supports, as the educator, I still have to believe that this can work. Or if I'm given a curriculum that maybe is more direct instruction and I don't have that leeway, I still have to think, how do I actually reach the students sitting in front of me? How do I make this meaningful? So mindset, I think, is a big part of it, both on both ends. For me as a parent, I yes, I have maybe the privilege of being a parent and an educator and kind of understanding the things. Um, but I really, to your point about being a constructivist, I really center in community engagement as
Mm.
something that's important to me. So
Yeah.
I've had my own kids struggle in math, and it's been hard to watch them struggle, right? Because I'm like, "What?" And
Yeah.
I've had, especially my middle daughter, I remember there was one day she's doing a word problem, she's just like, "Who cares about this?" Right? Like, she didn't see she's like, "Why do I care how much trail mix this teacher is making? Like, this seems irrelevant to me." She couldn't see a connection to it. And
Yeah.
so with her, we started cooking to get her to understand fractions, right? And so she loves to bake now and right, I pull up a recipe and she already knows she's gonna ask me to double this or divide it and like but it's meaningful to her at that because she wants to make the thing and she's willing to understand the math and even understand like the size and the quantity. So I think what we can do as parents in those spaces is try to invite opportunities to bring math into the classroom through community building, because I think then it doesn't step in on the toes of whatever curriculum that teacher is using, whatever pacing guide that they have to, there's a lot of other things that those teachers are negotiating while also trying to deliver strong instruction. And so I've done things within my child's community about like, can we just go on a math walk? Can I take kids out like during recess? Maybe I'm going to volunteer and we're going to do a math walk. And I'm gonna ask, like, do you see anything that's parallel? What shapes do you see? Right? Just again, creating that space where it invites them that math is not stuck to this one part of the day when we got to get out our blue notebook and I got to take notes and I don't like this thing, but that they can experience math in other ways. And then when they see something, I mean, the biggest reason why we do mommy school each summer is because I don't want for my kids to have the first exposure to whatever concept be the only exposure that they get in the classroom. I
Yeah.
want them, because I know sometimes that exposure might not, like, especially for my middle daughter. Middle children are sassy. I'm a middle child. Uh, but for my middle daughter, when if her first experience to dividing fractions is this concept through trail mix that she's just like, what the, like, this is dumb. Who cares about this thing?
Right.
sh- that attitude impacts how she engages with it, and it impacts how she even sees herself in her own math identity.
Mm.
When I can say, yeah, you might see it this way, but you could also see it this way and this way and this way. Then when she comes in, she can say, okay, yep, I got to do it this way. And that's okay. I could follow this thing. I understand like the rules of this game. And I understand that this concept is even bigger than just this one problem here in this space. So yeah, I often think about like, how can I volunteer at my kid's school to give the teacher a break? Let me watch the
Yeah.
kids during,
Yeah.
right? Let me give you a break. And I'm also not going to come in here and try to rewrite your curriculum or say that you're doing it right or wrong. But I can also, how do I add? How do I bring in the community and add to that space? Um, and add to it through games, right? Right? We know from a culturally responsive space, and Zaretta Hammond speaks a lot of this, right? Like when we gamify things, when we make things social, when we make it, when we storyfy it, right? When I tell a story to kids about, I had to teach this concept around combinations and depreciation of something, and what are the chances of us finding a lemon out of this. And I'm teaching like this probability course to some freshmen at the local university, but I was dealing this with the same thing with my car, and I was like, oh, my car keeps getting these recalls and I had this thing fall out. So I tell them this whole story, and then they get into the problem. And then later a student comes back. She's like, I need help with this. She's like, but I know this problem is like your car because
Yeah.
I guess, right. And so she made a connection enough to say, like, I actually care about this because I'm driving a car right now and I don't want my car to be a lemon. And I want to know how many times they let this car go through this production, right? So
Right.
making it real and relevant, I think, is important, and leading into those spaces of whether it's a game, whether it's a story, whether it's this social experience, I think is so important. And that's where I think we can support our educators without being a burden to the many things that I know that they're juggling with and doing a great job with, but also depending on um, their comfort level, their expertise, certain things that they choose to lean in on or not. So it's
Great.
it's hard. It's
Yeah,
tricky.
it is. It is. It is. So I had we're coming down to the
Yes.
end here, and
Mhm.
I had so many more questions for you that I was thinking of, but as we started to speak, this has really gotten me thinking about another big issue. So I don't know how long we have to talk about
Sure.
this. Maybe another 10 minutes or
Yeah.
so.
Absolutely.
We'll see. But we talked about how we talked about the high quality uh, curriculum that we have in
Mhm.
in 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 problem based curriculum. What I see often when teachers struggle with making the transition to utilizing a problem based approach is that a district might they might adopt a problem-based curriculum. So let's suppose that a district adopts illustrative mathematics in let's assume it's second we'll assume it's secondary
Mhm.
for now. And some teachers were a little resistant because they're used to teaching out of a traditional textbook. They don't want to use the material, and not only do they not want to use the material, they decide, well, I'm just going to use this piece,
Gonna
and then I'm going to make my own lessons
Yes.
from here and here and here and here. And we know that there's some research behind that when teachers, and no offense to teachers, I used to do this too, but when teachers create their own curriculum, it's likely less rigorous than and inequitable
Yep.
compared to using high quality curriculum. So my question is, why is it so important that a teacher doesn't just piecemeal something together, but really when a district adopts a curriculum, the teacher really should give it their best shot in teaching the curriculum to um, I like to use the word integrity because there's sometimes they want
Mhm.
maybe change the context so that it does mean something to a kid,
Right.
but really give a shot. Use the curriculum because that's high quality, the high quality curriculum that it was board adopted
Mhm.
for many. But why is it so important for them to be using it?
Yeah, no, absolutely. This is always a big one, right? That
Yeah.
whole fidelity word or integrity. And I think, using curriculum with fidelity doesn't mean that you're locked up in every single word. It means that you're trusting the intentionality, the intentional sequencing, and the structure, while also using your judgment to potentially adapt based on your students'
Yes.
needs, right? And so that adaptation might be, oh, let's change the context here a little bit so that way, like a great example, I saw somebody doing a problem around murals, and which was in our curriculum. And they decided, like, yeah, I'm going to bring in a mural from our local area. So then students start to see the connection, right? Like we give you some images, but yeah, like absolutely bring that in. Or if even better, yeah, if you have a chance to take the students there or take a picture there and really dive into the mathematics behind it. I think the risk of kind of like the take and bake, the hodgepodge kind of approach is that when teachers rely on like these loosely connected resources, they could accidentally be introducing gaps in understanding. They could be
Mm.
introducing inconsistencies in the expectation and even potentially missing opportunities to build on prior learning. So the coherence and the progression that we are very intentional with within our curriculum really does matter, especially for helping students to build that strong conceptual foundation.
Mm.
Um, we believe, right, at IEM that it's important to design this curriculum to help elevate teacher decision making and not replace it. And so
Mm.
that's why within our curriculum, you'll see we offer opportunities for those embedded questions. We have, anticipated student responses. So teachers could already be thinking, like, oh, kids might say this, and what will be my response? Having those instructional routines, again, that support the teachers and deciding, like, here's this routine is just what the students need in this moment to help give clarity and confidence. And so that's already built in. Like we said, curriculum is part of the puzzle. What our teachers are doing and how they drive that is also really important. But at the heart of it, we don't believe in teaching the curriculum. We believe in teaching students through the curriculum, right?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
at the center are still your students. At the center is still you thinking about how can I be responsive to what students are bringing me,
Hmm.
and their knowledge and their experience to take them to the next step. And if I'm taking, a piece from here, or I really like that, each year we do a thing on bats. So I'm going to bring this bat activity in and I'm going to try to like fit it into this thing. And I'm taking this other piece. Again, while you might maybe be hitting relevancy, you might be missing the coherence. Or on the flip, you might have, progression in mind, but you maybe haven't had the opportunity to think about the if thens that could happen. What happens when a student is showing this component, but they haven't yet shown this other piece? Where do I go next? I don't know. I haven't thought about that yet. Or let me go back and find another thing that actually might be either reinforcing a concept or an idea that they already have understood, and it's not even the next step of where they need to go in the progression. Or you could be inadvertently either teaching outside of the scope of your like grade band. Sometimes we have spaces where we're actually under teaching and we're excited, like, oh, they're learning, they're doing all the things, and we haven't actually exposed them to the necessary grade level content. Or we could be over teaching and we're getting them to something that, and it's great if they're reaching that, but along with reaching that, you could have these gaps in learning. And that's why we really believe in, even like within our accelerated programs, we we've identified like these core things versus skipping learning, because while students might be ready for something here, they might be missing like proportional reasoning and rational thinking. And then later when they get further along in math, like there's this gap and we're all trying to figure out, why don't they understand this one piece? And it could have been that we inadvertently skipped something because we weren't thinking about like the coherence and the progression of that learning. So as always, right? Part of it is trusting the process. Part of it is, um, if teachers are struggling with this adaptation, identifying like what are like the core components that I can try, that I can get those early wins, that I can see that growth, and then continue to add on. You don't have to do every single instructional routine. You don't have to do, every language routine, but we give you a number of them so that you can start to build like your repertoire and your tool belt and be ready to support your students when they need that support. And so I think that's the part, like when we think about adoption and we think about whether the adoption process feels like it was done to them or it's an opportunity for them to lean in, we need to consider from like a coaching perspective and an implementation perspective, what's kind of like this tiered approach of exposure and understanding for our educators that they can take on and feel confident in doing that with their students, and then continue to build on with different tools and resources as necessary.
All right. Yeah, thank you for that. It's been I know it's a struggle in a lot of places. So,
Yeah.
um, thank you. So we've hit about the 50-minute mark. So I'm gonna just ask to let everyone know how they can reach you if they want more information, or um, to follow you if you have any social media,
Yeah.
and anything else you can give us before we end this.
Absolutely. So you can always go to illustrativemath.org, and there's a number of ways that you can reach anyone within our organization to learn more about IEM. Our open access curriculum is on accessiem.org, where folks can log in and get a chance to dive into some of our newest version 360 curriculum. You could definitely find me either on LinkedIn under April Mouton. You could find me on X, though I'm not on X as much, Educator AJM,
Yeah.
but definitely LinkedIn, and diving straight onto our main website is a great way to learn more, to gain more information, and kind of play around with the different tasks and routines that we have embedded in there.
All right. Thank you so much, April, for being on the podcast today. I really appreciate this conversation. I think it's going to be great for a lot of people out there.
Thank you so much. Again, thank you for the time, and thank you, educators out there listening, for the hard work that you continue to do. Just really in awe and always working in effort to serve our communities even better. So thank you.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for listening, and hope you listen next month. Thank you.